When it came out several years ago, Black Panther made a ton of money for Disney. It was a huge commercial and critical success. I thought the movie was good, but not great. In fact, over time, my opinion on it kind of soured a little bit. The special effects were fairly mediocre. The fight coordinating and sequences were like kind of bad. The performances overall were really good. I thought the story left a lot to be desired. But Chadwick Boseman was a great T'Challa. Um, and and he passed away a couple years ago. He died before the filming of this film, and so they had to change everything about the movie. They had to rewrite the whole thing and make it about something else. And the movie really suffers as a result. It's got some good things. It's got a lot of things wrong with it, and let's talk about all that stuff. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Before we get started, click on that red subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you know whenever I post a new piece of content. So I'm going to talk a lot about this movie, and I'm going to get into some light spoilers. I'm not going to ruin the movie for you. You're not going to get major set piece descriptions or anything like that, but I am going to do some like super duper light spoilers. I won't ruin the movie. I'm not going to tell you what the mid-credits scene is about. I will talk about it. I'll critique it, but I'm not going to spoil any. I'm not going to spoil anything big for you. So this is going to be a relatively tame review from the spoiler standpoint. The things I liked about the movie: the female actresses kind of lead the way here, and they're all really strong. This is a movie that has a bunch of great performances. For me, Lupita Nyong'o, even though she isn't in the movie, she's not like in the movie a lot. She's an important presence in the film. She comes in a little bit later in it, but she's not like the main character. But she's really good. And then Angela Bassett is awesome. She's really, really great as the queen. Her character is central to the story. She dominates every scene that she's in, and she's really the emotional crux of the story. And I think she's awesome in this. And she got jacked. She's like cut in this movie. And good for her. Good for her. She kicks ass in this, and she's great. I'm a huge fan of her work, and in this, she's particularly awesome. So the mid-credits scene here is one of the best Marvel has probably ever done. It's much more about this story and not like the greater Marvel MCU universe, which I really, really respect and appreciate. They did this one right. I don't know or remember if the M word is used in any of the other Marvel movies yet. The word mutant. It's used in this, not in the context of the X-Men, but the fact that they can finally use that word now that Disney owns the rights to the X-Men is dope, and I love that it's mentioned here. They kind of had to skirt around that word in other films, most specifically Age of Ultron, where they call them enhanced persons, the Maximoff twins. But now they get to call mutants, and they do in this movie in a different context, but it's great. I love hearing that word here. So that's what I liked about the movie. Overall, I thought the story was okay, but I do have some critiques. So this movie is like way too freaking long. This movie is like 2 hours and 45 minutes, and it feels long. What I liked about Endgame is that the pacing was kind of perfect. It had its really like slow and quiet moments, but it always kept things moving. This movie really, really drags, and it feels extremely long. And despite this like insane length, the editing is a little herky-jerky, and it was really noticeable for me. In particular, what they'll do is they'll have a scene, and the scene will be really long, and it'll be, whether it's dialogue or action or whatever, and then they'll have like a little snippet or a little like tiny little piece of action that happens at the end of the scene. And it's so short that they cut it and just move on. And this happens almost every scene. It's like big set piece, something happens in a kitchen, and I'm trying really not to hard to spoil it, but it happens between two of the characters, and a character pulls something out of a drawer and they show what it is, and then it's like, instead of letting that sit in, it's just cut and we're done. It's almost like they knew the movie was too long, and so they tried to like make these tiny little shortcuts in the editing booth, and it's really obvious and it's really jarring, and they just do it throughout the entire movie. It is constant and it is really noticeable and annoying. Movies are really made, they live and die based on how they're edited. The movie really comes together in the editing booth, and it seems like they really screwed some stuff up here that's really noticeable. Agent Ross, who is played by Martin Freeman in the last movie, he's also in most noticeably Civil War. He's in this movie and he's just a joke. Like him and his boss, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, they're just here to be punching bags and jokes at the expense of white people. That's all. That's the purpose they serve, is like some slight moving of the story, and like, hey, we want to remind you that this takes place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then we're gonna make a couple of dumb jokes, and they're just gonna be punching bags, so we can make fun of white people. Which, whatever, that's fine. Like, I'm not offended by the jokes. It's just very, very what's the word? Lazy. It's lazy storytelling, and it kind of sucks because I like that character. I like Agent Ross, and he played an important part of the last movie. And here he serves two purposes, and they're both lame. The villain here is a big, huge letdown for me. He just is. They can't seem to figure out how to pronounce his name. Different characters pronounce it differently. He pronounces it himself as Namor, and everyone else calls him Namor, and I don't understand why. Like, it seems like that's something you guys could have worked out. And he's just not very compelling. They give him some very light backstory, and that's tough because everyone loved Killmonger as a villain. I think the fact that people now kind of try and look back on him as a good guy who like had good intentions. Nah, dog, Killmonger was trash. He was a terrible person, and he should be viewed as terrible because he was terrible. He was a good, compelling villain, but he was a very bad guy. He was not the hero of that story, despite people trying to like retcon that and act like he was some hero. He was not. He was a terrible person. But he was a great villain in that movie. And in this, there's just none of that. Namor, I couldn't empathize with him. He's just like rote, generic, boring bad guy for the sake of being in an action movie and a foil to the good guys. And his motivations are dumb. They're lazy. We've seen basically the exact same type of villain in another major comic book movie from another major comic book company. That one is owned by Warner Brothers. You can probably figure it out. But he has a lot of ties to, he has a lot of similarities to that movie franchise. So yeah. And I think the biggest struggle this movie has is a lack of focus. The length and the focus are two major components that really derail this thing for me. It really struggles without T'Challa. And a great example of this is the very beginning of the movie. And this is probably the most spoiler thing I'm going to say, but it's not super spoilery. This movie starts off and it gets Chadwick Boseman's death out of the way very quickly. And by very quickly, I mean like 2 minutes. They dedicate almost no time whatsoever to killing him off screen. It's really pathetic, and the character deserved better. I really think that the character and the actor deserve better, which is weird because the entire movie is like this loving tribute to him. And they get it out of the way so quickly. And then they have the Marvel logo where it like slowly comes onto the screen. And in the other films, it has the various characters, and it's all just Chadwick. It's all just Black Panther, which I think is really cool because you're going to pay tribute to him. You want this movie to be a tribute. It's got the, this is for our friend Chadwick at the end in the credits. And they tried so hard to make this movie a loving tribute to him that they really did him dirty in the way they handled the character's death, because they're just like, Okay, we got that out of the way. Let's move on. And yet the movie is so hell bent on showing us that everybody is really, really sad about T'Challa's death that they just, I don't know how they managed to screw that part up because it's a really important part of the movie, obviously. So yeah, this movie is just 2 hours and 45 minutes of everybody being really sad about Chadwick Boseman's death. You can tell that the actors are sad, the characters are sad. You can tell the producers and the editors and everyone's just really sad. And I appreciate that, and I like what they tried to do. I mean, hell, the name Black Panther is not even predominantly featured in the marketing materials. All of the posters, all the trailers, Wakanda Forever is the big, like, it's the main focus of all the marketing. So they just, I feel like they tried so hard to do it, and then just in so many instances forgot to like put these other compelling characters in, which is a bummer. It's a big sucky bummer. So I didn't like this movie very much. I thought it was okay. It's one of the weaker Marvel entry films, and really, it's just yet another example of Marvel doesn't seem to know what they're doing post Endgame, with the exception of Spider-Man: No Way Home. They just don't seem to find themselves on solid footing, and that's really disappointing because I think that there's so much potential there. We'll see what happens in a couple months. We're getting Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, so there's still time to get things back on track. That movie looks like it's going to be much more of an MCU movie, much more large scale, much more multiple characters juggling multiple universes and all that stuff. So we'll see what happens. I did not love this movie, and that's kind of a bummer because I think they could have done a lot better with it. But really, they had a tough task in trying to make a film about Wakanda without Black Panther, and I don't think they did a great job of it. So hit me up in the comments. Am I way off base? Is this like an amazing movie? Let me know. Hit me up and give me the feedbacks. Follow me on social media at RealHometownZero on Instagram, and I'll see you all next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Thanks.